Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because what you're about to hear may shatter your assumptions. The headline says it all: Trump is in deeper trouble than anyone imagined. And yet that is not hyperbole. This is not clickbait. This is the latest chapter of a drama unfolding on the American stage. A drama with consequences far beyond politics as usual. You may think you know his problems. You may assume this is just another lawsuit like the many before. But let me tell you, what's happening now is seismic. The walls that once protected untouchability are crumbling. The powers that shielded him are being tested. And the question is no longer whether Trump faces trouble, but whether our institutions can survive the test. Today I am going to lay out how Trump's legal quagmires have escalated beyond anything we've seen before, and why, for democracy itself, this might be the most consequential moment of his life. A pause, because when you are dealing with someone who has long reshaped the rules, exposing him is not just about law. It is about system, about precedent, about the very soul of the republic. Donald Trump's legal battles are no longer just isolated events. They've morphed into a full-scale storm that stretches across multiple jurisdictions, involving prosecutors, judges, and investigators who are digging into every corner of his political and business life. For years, Trump has thrived on controversy. He has turned scandals into fuel for his supporters, framing every investigation as a witch hunt and every indictment as proof that the establishment fears him. But this time, the storm is wider, deeper, and far more dangerous. It is not about one case or one allegation or one lawsuit that can be brushed off as partisan theater. This is a cascade of overlapping legal crises, each one striking at the core of his empire, his political future, and even his personal freedom. The federal election interference case is one of the most significant challenges Trump faces. Prosecutors allege he actively conspired to overturn the 2020 election results, pushing false claims and pressuring officials to bend the law. The evidence, from phone calls to internal memos, paints a picture of someone who wasn't just contesting an election, but attempting to dismantle the very system that governs it. In Georgia, the racketeering charges related to his efforts to pressure state officials into finding votes strike at the heart of state sovereignty and electoral integrity. It is not merely about Trump, it is about whether any future candidate can strong-arm state authorities without consequence. Then there's the New York civil fraud case, which delivered a devastating blow to Trump's carefully curated image as a real estate mogul. The court found that for years, he and his organization had inflated property values to secure loans and misled investors. The judgment wasn't just financial, it attacked the mythology of Trump the businessman, the successful tycoon who built an empire through brilliance and deal-making. When that illusion cracks, it's not just a legal defeat, it's a blow to the very foundation of his political brand. What makes this legal chaos particularly dangerous is the convergence of all these battles at once. No former president has ever faced such a complex tangle of simultaneous prosecutions. Each case brings its own risks: prison time, massive financial penalties, reputational damage, and political fallout. Individually, Trump might have survived them, just as he has weathered countless controversies in the past. But together, they create a pressure cooker unlike anything he has ever experienced. His lawyers are stretched thin, his allies are forced to pick which battles they can publicly defend, and the sheer volume of evidence piling up makes it harder and harder to reduce everything to a simple slogan like witch hunt. And still, Trump does what he always does: fights back, attacks the prosecutors, frames himself as the victim of a corrupt system. But the sheer number of cases, the gravity of the charges, and the credibility of the institutions involved make it increasingly difficult for him to sustain the narrative that he is merely being persecuted. The escalating chaos reveals not just the vulnerabilities of one man, but the fragility of a system that is struggling to hold him accountable while under the constant barrage of his counterattacks. This is no longer just about survival in the political arena. It is about whether the rule of law can withstand a stress test of this magnitude. Donald Trump's rise and continued dominance in American politics has been marked not just by his ability to connect with a loyal base, but also by his skill in bending institutions to his advantage. What we are witnessing now is not merely a legal fight, but a calculated effort to weaponize power, to reshape the battlefield so that the system itself becomes another tool in his arsenal. This isn't about traditional courtroom arguments or carefully constructed legal strategies. It's about leveraging influence, attacking credibility, and blurring the lines between politics and justice. From the very beginning, Trump has treated independent institutions as either allies to be rewarded or enemies to be crushed. The Department of Justice, for example, has often been the target of his attacks when its investigations didn't favor him. During his presidency, he repeatedly sought loyalty from attorneys general, demanded investigations into political opponents, and hinted that those who crossed him should face legal consequences. That same mentality now carries into his defense strategy. Whenever prosecutors bring charges, he doesn't just argue his innocence. He paints the prosecutors as partisan hacks, accusing them of working for his rivals. The tactic is simple but effective. If you can make the public question the motives of the institutions, then the strength of their cases weakens in the eyes of millions. Trump also understands the power of appointment and influence. By reshaping the judiciary during his time in office, he ensured that hundreds of federal judges now sit on benches with a perspective more favorable to his worldview. While judges are sworn to impartiality, the perception that Trump has placed allies in critical positions helps him foster the idea that he can tilt the system in his favor. It feeds into the narrative he sells to supporters: the courts are either with him or against him, never neutral. Beyond the courts, Trump weaponizes the sheer force of his public platform. He uses rallies, social media, and interviews to launch direct attacks on judges, prosecutors, and even jurors. These aren't just words spoken in frustration. They are calculated moves designed to intimidate, to sway public opinion, and to place immense pressure on the individuals charged with holding him accountable. Prosecutors have reported threats, judges have received security details, and jurors have faced intimidation campaigns. In such an environment, the impartial administration of justice becomes exceedingly difficult. What makes this even more concerning is how this behavior normalizes the politicization of institutions that were meant to remain above the fray. If Trump succeeds in convincing a large portion of the public that every investigation is illegitimate, that every judge is biased, that every jury is tainted, then he has effectively dismantled faith in the justice system. That damage extends far beyond his own trials. It sets a precedent for future leaders to use similar tactics, to delegitimize accountability mechanisms whenever they come under scrutiny. The weaponization of power and institutions is not just about Trump defending himself, it is about him rewriting the rules of engagement. He is no longer content to play within the system. He seeks to dominate it, to manipulate it, to transform it into an extension of his political campaign. For Trump, the courtroom is just another stage, and the institutions of justice are props in his ongoing performance. The danger lies in how effective this strategy can be, not only in protecting him, but in corroding the very foundations of democratic accountability. In American democracy, norms have always acted as the invisible guardrails that keep leaders in check when laws alone are not enough. They are the unwritten rules of restraint, the expectations that presidents, judges, and lawmakers conduct themselves with a sense of respect for institutions, even when they disagree with outcomes. For decades, these norms maintained stability through crises, ensuring that the system could absorb shocks without breaking. But with Donald Trump, those guardrails have been systematically dismantled, one decision at a time, leaving behind a system increasingly vulnerable to abuse. Consider the principle that election results are respected even when they are bitterly contested. For over 2 centuries, losing candidates have conceded, sometimes reluctantly, but always with the understanding that the peaceful transfer of power is bigger than any individual. Trump shattered that expectation by refusing to concede the 2020 election and instead pursuing a strategy to undermine faith in the process. His false claims of fraud were not just political rhetoric, they became the basis for legal challenges, pressure campaigns on state officials, and ultimately, the storming of the Capitol on January 6. What was once unthinkable, a sitting president inciting doubts about the legitimacy of his own country's elections, has now become a precedent. If Trump can do it, others will be tempted to follow. The erosion of norms also shows in the way Trump interacts with the justice system. Traditionally, presidents and political leaders avoid publicly attacking judges, prosecutors, or jurors, even when they are involved in cases against them. It's an unwritten rule that helps preserve respect for the independence of the judiciary. Trump has bulldozed through that restraint, openly mocking judges, targeting prosecutors, and even calling out jurors. By doing so, he not only undermines the credibility of those cases, but signals to his followers that the justice system itself is corrupt whenever it challenges him. That erosion weakens one of the most critical democratic institutions, leaving it more vulnerable to politicization. Another norm under siege is the expectation that presidents and former presidents act with a degree of moral example. Whether it was Franklin Roosevelt addressing Americans in dark times, or even Richard Nixon resigning rather than dragging the nation deeper into crisis, the presidency has carried with it an understanding of responsibility. Trump has flipped this on its head, using his platform not to calm tensions but to inflame them, not to encourage faith in institutions but to attack them. His actions during investigations and trials demonstrate a willingness to exploit every tool, legal, political, or rhetorical, without any concern for the damage left behind. The danger of these breaches is not simply that Trump benefits in the short term, but that they normalize behavior that was once beyond the pale. If every future leader feels entitled to contest elections without evidence, to intimidate judges and jurors, or to ignore long-standing traditions of restraint, then the American system begins to look less like a democracy governed by shared rules and more like a battleground where power alone dictates legitimacy. Norms are fragile. They only work as long as people believe in them. Once they are broken, piece by piece, decision by decision, it becomes nearly impossible to restore them. And that is the true peril of this moment, not just what Trump has done, but the dangerous path it clears for those who will come after him. The consequences of Donald Trump's actions, and the system's response to them, will reverberate far beyond his own career or lifetime. What is unfolding now is not simply a legal or political drama centered on one man, but a defining test for American democracy. Whether Trump is held accountable or allowed to escape unscathed will set precedents that future leaders, prosecutors, and even ordinary citizens will look to as the standard of what is permissible. His cases are not just about his personal guilt or innocence. They are about whether the principle that no one is above the law will remain a cornerstone of the American system or fade into an outdated slogan. If Trump ultimately avoids serious consequences, despite the mountain of legal battles surrounding him, it sends a chilling message that power, wealth, and influence can protect individuals from accountability. That outcome could embolden future leaders to act with even greater impunity, knowing that the guardrails are weak and that precedent now favors those willing to push boundaries. The damage would not be limited to the presidency. Governors, lawmakers, and officials across the country might adopt the same tactics, undermining elections, pressuring courts, or bending institutions, with the confidence that the worst they will face is a slap on the wrist. In such a scenario, democracy slowly transforms into a system where rules apply selectively, depending on who holds power. On the other hand, if Trump faces real and meaningful consequences, the impact will be just as profound, but in the opposite direction. It will demonstrate that institutions, however battered, still have the strength to hold even the most powerful accountable. It would send a signal to future leaders that while political influence might buy time, it cannot erase the truth or shield them indefinitely. Such an outcome could help restore faith in democracy, proving to the public that justice is not just for the powerless but for everyone. Yet even in this scenario, the road will not be easy. Trump's attacks on prosecutors, judges, and institutions have already eroded trust among millions of Americans. Convictions or penalties could be dismissed by his supporters as illegitimate, deepening divisions and feeding conspiracy narratives. Another lasting consequence is the way Trump has reshaped political discourse. He has normalized the use of inflammatory rhetoric against opponents, the media, and even institutions of justice. This style of politics will not vanish with him. It has already been adopted by others both in the United States and abroad. The language of defiance, victimhood, and attack has become a template for politicians seeking to energize their base by framing themselves as rebels against a corrupt establishment. The next generation of leaders will inherit a political culture more confrontational, less restrained, and far more willing to tear down institutions if it benefits them. Perhaps the most enduring consequence lies in public trust. Democracies survive not just on laws and constitutions, but on the belief of ordinary people that the system is fair and functional. Trump's relentless efforts to delegitimize elections, investigations, and courts have sown seeds of doubt that will not vanish quickly. Millions now genuinely believe that justice is a tool of political persecution, and millions more worry that powerful figures can get away with anything. This erosion of trust may outlast Trump by decades, making it harder for future leaders to govern effectively and harder for institutions to command respect. In the end, Trump's story is not just his own. It is the story of a system confronting one of its most serious challenges, with outcomes that will shape the future of democracy itself. Whatever the verdicts, whatever the penalties, the echoes of this moment will linger in the way America defines accountability, fairness, and the rule of law for generations to come. So here is where we stand. Trump is in deeper trouble than anyone imagined. And not because the press is piling on, not because his opponents are amplified, but because the system itself is pushing back. The tide that once sheltered him is receding. The institutions he tried to master are flexing, resisting. Yet, this moment is fragile. It demands vigilance, courage, truth. It demands that we, as citizens of democracy, refuse to look away. Because if we permit a power beyond the law to stand unchallenged, we are choosing cynicism over justice. In the end, the fate of Trump is less important than the fate of what we believe, that no one is above the law. That power must answer. That institutions must endure. History will judge this moment, and I cannot guarantee the verdict will be kind. The question, then, is what side of history do you want to stand on? Thank you. And let's be clear, the fight is just beginning.